So, morning everyone. Thank you for giving up some of your Saturday morning to be here today. What I wanted to do is go through a bit of a tour of some of the functions in the program at the moment. Many of you, you will have received in the last days an email inviting you to download an update to the current version of RadarOpus, which is version 1.32. If you haven't downloaded that update yet, that link's in the email, or just pop me an email, I'll send it to you again. And the live update's about to be released shortly, so you'll also get automatic prompts from your program to download and install the newest version in the coming couple of days. I wanted to give you, I guess, a bit of a tour of the program, and we're going to look at, I guess, a fairly basic level today. You'll see a lot of the functions that we're going to look at, we've looked at before, so if you've been using the program for a little while, a lot of this will be familiar for you. But there's a few areas that have changed. What we've been doing over the last month or so is incorporating some, I guess, directional changes or some layout changes in the program based on feedback from all of you to try and simplify the way that you work with things in the program. So I wanted to go through and give you, I guess, a guideline to some of those changes and what they are and how you can move around things a little bit faster. So if we just start with a general tour at the moment, you can see from my screen at the moment, this is the layout of the program. Of course, it's the same. We have on our top of the program, across this very top area, various buttons that access the different functions or features or areas of the program. On our left-hand side, we have a table of contents. And this shows groups of books or documents or patients or the various categories of information that we use in homeopathy. And on the right-hand side, we have our display window where you can see the document or the function that you're working with at the moment. This left-hand area with the table of contents, we can see there's actually 5 tables of contents. The default one when you first open the program is repertories, which is what we see at the moment. And you can always access that by pushing this repertories button in the top corner. We also have references, which is essentially all the non-repertorial documents. It's materia medicas, provings, journals, therapeutics, philosophy books, the whole range of homeopathic information. And so you see when I push this, we have all the references appear down below here. We have patients. And you can see I've got a list of example patients in this one here because this is it's not the computer that I use in my practice, which is why you can see all of my clients are named after superheroes. But this is where we can access the information on our patients. Remedies. This gives you a simple listing of all the remedies that exist in the database. You can access more information about them. And also for the family groupings. So whatever you want to work with, you can click onto the table of contents and open up those. On the right hand side we have the display window, and you can see at the moment a welcome screen. This is going to appear when you first open the program, after you first installed the program, or after each time you've updated the program. And this gives you access to a couple of important bits of information. The 2 chief ones being in the top corner, there's a quick start video which shows you the basic functions of the program and gets you started using it. But also what I wanted to draw your attention to today is this link here, which gives you a link to a PDF detailing the changes and the new functions and features in each stage of development of the program. So when you do download an update, if you want to see a more detailed list of changes or things that have been done in this current version, you can click on that link there and it will open up a PDF and you can go and read through all those details. I'll close this tab down now because we don't need this one anymore. So with this one gone, on the right hand side I have tabs for essentially everything I have open at the moment, and at the moment I have some repertories and some materia medicas, some references open, so I can see a tab with my repertories and a tab with the references that I've got open. If you want to see a bigger version than this, you can actually retract that table of contents. So down in the bottom corner you can see just down here I've got this button here, hide the table of contents, or the keyboard command and control F2. So if I click that, that will move that table of contents out of the way and it becomes retracted, and you can just focus on the window that you're working with. Very shortly in the next update coming of the program, that table of contents will actually become automatically retracting. So at any stage when you're not using it, it will slide itself away and give you access to the display window full screen, such as you see at the moment. We're just essentially trying to move those other books out of the way so you can focus on the book that you're working with right now. As you will have noticed, everyone at the moment has got access to the full version of the program. Every book, every function, every feature that's available is in your program at the moment, which means you've got all the books that you love to work with, but you've also got about 3,000 other books in various languages that you may not be working with. So this is one of the ways that we can move, I guess the metaphor I use is we're moving the bookshelf out of the way so you can focus on the couple of books that are on your desk at the moment. So getting ready for that, there's a couple of little functional changes in the current version, and that's what I kind of wanted to talk you through today. So if you want to open a new book, so I'm going to open a repertory. I've got here open synthesis, and you can see in my repertories tab, I've got a little drop down. I've got a few other repertories open. I've got De Groot Stream repertory, Jeremy Sher's repertory of mental qualities and the synthesis. Say I also want Murphy. Just up here in my search for repertory, I'm going to type Murphy, and I can just click on this document, and it will open it up in my tab over here. One thing I want to draw your attention to is when you do open a book like this, and this is just for version 1.32, but afterwards if I could just ask you to push this little reload button and to clear that limitation, because that's got a connection to the search function, which I'll show you shortly, and I'll remind you then why that's important. But if we click the document, so it will open up this document, so I can see in my tab here, I've got Murphy's repertory, version 3, listed there below, and again I've got my drop down arrow. I can move back and forth between my documents. Exactly the same for the references. I can have multiple Materia Medicas open, move into that tab, and click my drop down and move back and forth between the documents as much as I want to. So some changes for the, I guess, the way that you access and move things around in this version. I want to run you through the navigation. So let's look at the repertory as a first example. You'll see in the tab, and it's actually the same for the repertories and for the references, you have your binoculars button, which you can click with your mouse. It brings up your navigation window, so it shows you chapters for all the document that you're in at the moment. So in this case I'm in synthesis. You can see in my header, this is the navigation window for synthesis, treasure edition, and I've got all my chapters available. So if I wanted to go to a specific rubric, I can just click my chapter button, go to Mind chapter for example. Here's an index of all the sections of the Mind chapter, and the default in 1.32 is these are arranged alphabetically. You've got the option, of course, to arrange them alphabetically or Kentian or the variety that suits you. The default is alphabetical arrangement. If I want to go to the fear section, for example, I can just start typing. So with my keyboard, if I push the letter F now, you see up the top here, the letter F appears, and I'm limited now to the F section of this chapter. If I type E, A, and the more I type, the more limited this becomes. And I can use the Enter or the mouse button to click on that word, choose a section, and now again, you can see in the header, I'm in the Mind Fear section. Here are all the things people can be afraid of. I'll go to cats. I can click on this. So now I'm in the Mind Fear Cats of section. And I can keep moving down the levels until I find what I want and eventually push the Go To button, which will take me to the repertory and show me that rubric. So there's that rubric there in my repertory. If I want to put that in analysis, I'll drag and drop it and pop it in a clipboard. Another change in the 1.32 is another default has been modified. So this header here, you can see it says Mind Fear Cats of in the header above the repertory. It's telling you where you are in the repertory at the moment. This also is an active button. So if I wanted to go back a step, I can click on any part of this to take me back up a level. So for example, I've taken here my Mind Fear Cats of. I want to go back and look at something else my client's afraid of. I can click on the word fear. And you can see it takes me back into my navigation window. Again, Mind Fear in my header. I'm back at that fear section, and I can go to what I want to see now. So I'll go to dogs, and I'll click enter. Yep, that's good. So I can either push enter again, or with my mouse click this Go To button to take me to the repertory. Here's my Mind Fear Dogs of. I'll drag it, drop it, and pop it in there. So you've got two options here for navigating with the mouse. At least you can click on this binoculars button to open up a list of chapters. If you're a keyboard user, pushing the F2 command will do the same thing. Or I can click here on any of these sections, and if there's 6 or 7 layers, I can click on whichever level I want to go to. It will open up at that level and open up that other window. You can do the same on the keyboard by pushing the F3 function button. The other thing, of course, you could also do is using your keyboard, use the arrows, the forward and the back arrows on your keyboard. So if I push a leftward pointing arrow or a back arrow, see it also opens up that navigation window at the level above where I am, and I can use the arrows also within here to move back up and down levels. Okay, so I'm going to move out of there. So that's a basic idea of navigating around, and you can see you can do the exact same thing in your references. So I'm here. This is in George Hiltukas's Materia Medica Viva, really very useful Materia Medica. I can click on my binoculars, and it shows me all the sections. In this case, the chapters are all medicine names. If I want to look at pulsatilla, I could type P-U-L-S and scroll down to pulsatilla. Okay. So the basic moving around is going to be the same in both of those documents. Okay. So there have been another modification to a default setting in this version which relates to the way you do searches. And again, this is to do with that philosophy of moving the bookshelf out of the way. So I might do it now just as an example. I'll get rid of that table of contents and just go into my repertory. So when I do a search, the default search setting in version 1.32 has been changed to search the open documents. So essentially you're presented with a table of contents at the start. You can choose which documents you want to have open in your program. And then from that point on, whenever you execute a search, the default is always going to be to first return the results from the documents that you've got open at the moment. You're kind of like focusing on your favorite books on your desktop and then leaving aside the option to go to the bookshelf when you want to. So if I do a search, for example, I'll do the first one by just going up into the main toolbar here. You can see I've got this search box. If I look for, say, Fear of Spider, and I click Enter to execute that search, it's going to go through all those documents I've got open, search for those keywords, fear and spider, and you can see it's presented to me first the results from synthesis because that's the document that I'm in at the moment. So whenever you execute a search, the first document those results are going to be returned to you is your current document, either a repertory or a reference, whichever one you happen to be in at the time. And you'll see this brings up the table of contents for me down this left-hand side with a list. Essentially, this is all the documents I've got open that have got something in them about fear of spiders. So if I'm looking in my current document, synthesis, it's okay. That's not what I'm looking for here. Let's go look in de Groot's Dream repertory. I can click it, and it's going to take me through and bring me up the information from here. I'm just going to clear that, and I'll show you a different way of doing the search now. So another way of doing the search is doing a question mark. So if you type a question mark button with your keyboard, so it's a shift question mark for Australian keyboards, this brings up our search window. So I'm just going to refresh this. I'm having a display issue this morning. There we go. Okay, so shift question mark brings up the search window. Again, this does the exact same search. It's basically a simple search window, same as it was in Radar 10 previously for people who've been working with a Radar 10 program before or older Radar programs. And again, you can just type your keywords in. So I could type in fear of insect and see if there's something here about insects. Okay. So it brings it through here. It's taking me to Vermeulen's Concordant first because the last tab I was in was the Vermeulen's Concordant, my reference that's on top at the moment. If I want to look at synthesis, I can just click on synthesis or de Groot's or etc. The other option here is the advanced search. There's two different keyboard commands for the search, I should say. We can do the question mark or the F4 to bring up our simple search. Or if I do the F5, it brings up my advanced search, which is this version of the search field with the 4 columns. You can do some more sophisticated and detailed searches in here. You can move back and forth between the simple and the advanced search also just by clicking these buttons in the top right hand corner of the search window. While we're in here, I want to also draw your attention to the autocomplete. You'll see with RadarOpus, when you start typing in a search term or something that you're looking for, it's going to prompt you as to the details of the auto-completing that window or auto-completing that search term. So if I start typing a word like fear, F-E-A, you can see the program pops up an autocomplete with a list of all the available words that look something like fear. So I can type the whole word in, fear, and click enter. So I've chosen that word from my list. If I'm interested in something different than just a word, for example, a medicine, I could say look at pulsatilla, P-U-L-S. I'll do the abbreviation, so I'll put an apostrophe after that. You can see one of my options is pulsatilla pratensis as a remedy. See if I click on that, I'm doing a search for the word fear in the remedy pulsatilla pratensis, and I can execute my search. And then again, from my open documents, bring up the fears of pulsatilla pratensis. So anytime you want to search different documents rather than just the open documents, you have this option in the top corner of this window, search in, and you can specify a different selection of documents. You may want to say just the current document, or search in all the documents, or all the repertories, all the references, or maybe just the references that are provings, or some other combination of specific types of documents. So you can move back and forth between those different mixes as much as you want. Probably most of the time, if you're like me and most homeopaths, you want to focus on your favourite few books, so you can do that by looking at the open documents. Just another quick thing I want to point out to you is that if you want to look at all the documents at the same time, the default here is to focus on one document at a time. So I'm currently in Vermeulen's Concordant Materia Medica, or if I click it, I'm in Synthesis, Treasure Edition, or Murphy, etc. In my search window, just bring that back up again, I've got this little tab here, this button checkbox, View All Documents. If I tick that box and then do my search, try dark, then when it presents the search to me, it presents them in a list, all end to end. So it's still taking me to Vermeulen's Concordant because it was my current document. But if I scroll up and down the list, just excuse me, I just have to move this webinar program so I can find my scroll bar. Okay. You can see it lists all my documents back to back. So if you want to see all the documents at the same time, you can do so by ticking that box. Okay. I'm going to untick that one again. I prefer to see just one document at a time, but you may prefer to see them all at once, in which case you can just tick that box and leave it ticked as a default setting. Okay, so I'm going to run through those again with you folks. So I'm just going to clear my clipboard and I'll get rid of these rubrics. So I'm going to go into my Analysis tab and start a new analysis and clear all clipboards. I don't need to save that. And we're going to close these ones down. Okay, so back in my synthesis, so there's a couple of ways we can do the searches. So I can do a search by just going into my search bar at the tab across the top here and type in what I'm looking for. So for example, fear, dark, and click enter. So that's executing a search and doing a search through my open documents, everything I have in my program that's open at the moment, everything that's in this display section in the right hand side of my program. You can see again it's brought synthesis up as my first result because that was the last document or the last tab that I was in. And if I want to look at a different document, I can just click it. So if I go to Vermeulen's Concordant, and I can click it, of Lucas's Materia Medica, etc., and just click on what I want to see. Another way to do it, I'll go back into synthesis, is I'm going to type the question mark on my keyboard. This also brings up the simple search window, and I can type my search in here. So, fear, insect, and I'll click enter. So they'll execute that search and find the rubrics related to fear of insects in that particular section. So I can see here in synthesis, fear of insects. If I look at de Groot's dream repertory, got a range of other options. The other way to do a search is I could push my search button in the main toolbar. It brings up my simple search. Or if I'm a keyboard user, I can push the F4 or the function button on my keyboard, and that will open up the search window also. If I push the F5 button, I'm just going to push that now. This opens up the advanced search window, which is for a range of different combinations. We'll look at that in a bit more detail another time. Okay. And so the reason why I want to show you the table of contents earlier is there has been a modification made in the 1.32. You guys will remember that you've got access to all the books at the moment, including a whole bunch of languages other than English, which some people are using quite a lot, and some people like me who are Anglophiles and only speak one language and don't even speak that very well, want to hide all the other books. So when I do a search, because it's going to limit my search to just the books that are visible in my table of contents, which is what you may have done is gone into your preferences for this table of contents, hidden all the non-English books. So it means when I execute a search, it's only searching the books which are currently visible in my table of contents. So this can be a little trick for you here, because if I've limited my table of contents, for example, and I only have a few documents visible, when I do a search, it may only focus on those few documents. This is something that the programmers will be changing in the 1.32, but at the moment, in order to hide those non-English documents for people who didn't want them, they've limited them in this way so that you're focusing on just the documents that are visible in this window. So just a reminder, if you're going to use this search field up here to find a book and open it, after you've opened up all the documents you want, just click the reload button to clear that field so you can see all the documents in your table of contents again. Okay, lovely. Okay, beautiful. So I wanted to show you guys something a little bit different today because there's a new function that's been released into the 1.32 which you may have used before because we did have this function in the Radar program. But this is the Herskew analysis. So it's based on Paul Herskew's work on working with cycles and segments. If you've not seen that before, probably you have seen it. Paul was in Australia recently for the conference and teaching a bit of this method with Amy, his wife. It's kind of, I guess, the other place you can go to find out about it if you haven't seen it before is his book Stramonium. So he's got a book just called Stramonium about the medicine Stramonium, but it's also a place where he's published information about his cycles and segments approach. Well, what he does with the cycles and segments is, you can translate this into the Opus program, is essentially rather than looking at which medicine is coming up in the highest number of rubrics, he breaks his case down into a number of segments, or themes you might say, and he's looking at which medicine comes up in the highest number of those themes or the highest number of groupings. So in program Opus, essentially you've got your clipboards here, the places where you store your rubrics. What you would do is assign a theme or a segment to each of these clipboards, and then we're going to do an analysis which tells us which medicine is coming up in the greatest number of the clipboards. So I guess the advantage here is it makes a bit of a more level playing field between different medicines. If we have one theme in one clipboard, say we've got a client who's deceitful, so we want to take all the deceitful rubrics, deceitful and liar and feigning illness and all those sorts of symptoms. I can put all those rubrics into one clipboard, and then even if a medicine comes up in multiple rubrics, usually a polycrest, it's still only going to be counted one time because it only exists in that one particular rubric or one particular symptom. So it moves the weight back more equally between the different medicines and gives you a way to, I guess, quickly combine things together. So I want to go through and do that as an example. So let's take that first theme of, say, lying or deceitful and go through and look at some of those rubrics there. So I'm going to go into the Mind chapter. So I just push the letter M on my keyboard, and up comes my navigation window with all the M chapters. I'm going to push the Enter button on my keyboard to open up the Mind chapter, and you can see now I'm in my navigation window. I've got all the sections of my repertory here, and I'm going to look for rubrics about lying. So I'll just start typing with my keyboard, L, I, A. Here we go, we've got liar, so I'm going to click Enter, or I could click that with my mouse. I've got some sub-rubrics. I don't really want those sub-rubrics, so I'm going to push the Go To button. And that takes me back to my repertory. Mind, liar, here's the rubric here. And I'm going to drag and drop that and pop that into clipboard number 1. So kind of usefully here is just below the liar rubric is a whole bunch of cross-references, so other similar rubrics that are out there. So I can see there's a rubric for deceitful. I think that's probably useful, that fits as well. So I'll click on that, and you can see that takes me to the Mind deceitful rubric just here, and I'm going to drag and drop that and pop that one in my clipboard. I also might think, okay, dishonest is useful. Take that, drag and drop it and pop it in my clipboard. And let's look at untruthful as well. I'll click that. There we go. Drag and drop it and pop it in my clipboard. So I've chosen 4 different rubrics that represent this idea of being deceitful or liar, dishonest, etc. If I do a standard repertorization, which I can do just by clicking on that button, so I can see arginate is in all 4 of these rubrics, Thu is in all 4 of them, opium's in 3 of them, morphine's in 3 of them, veratrum's in 3 of them, tarantula's in 3 of them, etc. Meterinum in 2, natmer in 2. So if I was doing a normal repertorization, obviously the weight of this is going to be pushing things towards arginate, thuya and opium, and those medicines that are coming up more highly, rather than focusing on the rest of my case, which I haven't put into my analysis yet. So the benefit of this cycles and segments approach is actually going to count all these medicines equally. So arginate is not going to come up any higher in my analysis compared to meterinum, even though it's in more rubrics, because the assumption being they both cover the theme, the segment of being dishonest or deceitful, so it doesn't matter which of the rubrics it's in. So in a way it's, I guess, creating a bit more of a general symptom or more of a general rubric. So if I say, okay, that's fine there, that's my first theme taken care of, what's the second theme of my case going to be? I might say my theme is about affection. So the other thing about them is that affection is really important. And I'll look through my symptoms that the clients report and say, okay, what symptoms have they got that relate to affection? And so I might say, well, they've got mind, chapter, company. So I'll type COMP, desire for. So I just navigate to that rubric and I drag that desire for company, and I'll use that as a rubric in my analysis. Maybe they also like touch, so I'll look for magnetizing, desire to be, people who like to be touched and stroked, and I drag and drop that, pop it in my clipboard, and I can see, oh, here's a cross-reference affectionate, that's what I want. I'll click on that one. Here's all the affectionate type remedies, so I can pop those into my clipboard. The way that you do this is that what some people do is you can also actually use quite broad symptoms that maybe are not directly related to what you're seeing. So for example, they may have a really strong craving for sugar, and you may be able to relate that really strong craving for sugar or sweet foods as part of this desire for affection or comfort, and it's part of the same theme. So I can actually put that in my clipboard as well. So I'm going to go to the generals chapter, so I'll click my binoculars, get a list of chapters available. I'm going to click on generals. I'm going to go to the food section by typing the word food, F-O-O-D, enter. I'll go to sweets, S-W-E-E-T-S, enter. D for desire, enter. That's as far as I want, so I can just push enter again, or with my mouse click the go to button, and I'll drag and drop that and pop it in the clipboard. So again, if I look at that clipboard, you can see I've got phosphorus coming up in all my rubrics, calcarea coming up in all my rubrics, silica coming up in all my rubrics, other ones, Nuxvom coming up in only 3. If I scroll down through the list, there'll be some that are only coming up in 2 or 1 of these symptoms. So in my analysis, because we're only counting thematically, we're saying, right, all these medicines have been represented in a rubric that matches that theme. So it doesn't matter to me if they're coming up in only 1 rubric or 4 rubrics, they're covered in that segment, that's all I need. And so from here we'll look at the Herskew analysis, and Herskew is going to tell us which medicines are coming up in all of the themes. In this case I've just picked 2, probably usually you'd pick more than 2. So to get to Herskew analysis, just down the bottom of the program here, bottom of your analysis window, you've got the option to choose your analysis method. If I click on that, you can see it brings up a list of the analysis methods available, a whole range of different mathematical formulas essentially to analyze what's coming up in your analysis. If I go here to Herskew analysis, you can see just at the bottom option, and I'm going to click that. Just refresh my screen. Here we go. So I've got the Herskew analysis here. And so this is telling me which medicines are present in both of my symptoms. So I need to add my clipboard back in. There we go. That's better. Okay, beautiful. So in this Herskew analysis window, you can see he's telling us there's 55 remedies that are present in the 2 fundamental segments. So out of my 2 clipboards, I've got 55 medicines. Probably still a bit too big of a list for me. But it's going to list them here. At the top, I can see all the medicines that are available. And at the bottom, it's limited to just the nosodes, the small and the medium remedies. So essentially taking out those big remedies or the polycrests, the things that are always going to come up more highly in analysis. So if I look at these small nosodes and medium-sized medicines, I see things like 15 of them, Agathis, it's highlighted at the moment. And so on the right-hand side here, I can see my list of rubrics and the grade that this medicine is in them. Click on Alcoholus, I can see the rubrics that it belongs to. Click on Androc, I can see the rubrics that it belongs to. Same thing at the top, it's just got the entire list of all the medicines in it. I can click on Crude, you get Polycrest, and these are the rubrics that it belongs to. So, but what's happened in the analysis is we're not looking at which medicines are in the highest number of rubrics, but we're looking at which medicines are in the most number of clipboards. So some of these medicines may be, if we look at alcohols, for example. It's in only 3 of my 8 rubrics. Compare that to, let's try argmet. It's in 4 of my 8 rubrics. If we try a really big one, probably sulfur is in here. There we go. Click sulfur. It's in 246 of my 8 rubrics, but they're coming up equally weighted because they're both covered in the same number of themes. Okay, so that's the idea with the HERSCU analysis. I just wanted to bring that one quickly to your attention to show you that that function has been released in the current version, and it's a useful way if you've got a case with a few clumps of themes to do your analysis and bring the details through. If you wanted to save this, so it saves exactly the same as the other analysis. It actually is exactly the same as the regular analysis. We can go to Analysis, click the drop down, and choose the option to save the current analysis. I'm just going to click that now. So this brings up my save window and gives me the options to either attach it to a patient, save the current analysis to an existing patient, to save the current analysis to a new patient. I can create a new patient file for this analysis, or save the current analysis to a folder, which essentially means rather than creating a patient file, which would be in my patient table of contents, it just saves it as a free-floating analysis. It's not attached to anything. So I can specify a name for the analysis. I'll save it in here, and I'll say, okay, this is my HERSCU example, and you can see I can press the save button here, and I get a little message saying this analysis has been saved. So I'll clear it and recall it. So again, I'll go to Analysis because all my analysis options are under this tab. Start New Analysis will clear all the symptoms. So it will clear all those rubrics out of my clipboards and shut down my analysis windows. I want to bring it back again, Analysis. Under here is the option to recall the existing analysis. So I'll just click here on Recall the existing analysis. It brings up my examples, so I can recall it from a patient or from a folder. So I'm going to recall that HERSCU analysis again, and I'll click Recall. And brings that analysis back up again. And again, I've got the exact same options before. I can go into my analysis strategies and just click on the HERSCU analysis, see that analyzed using the HERSCU weighting. In that analysis window, if you want to work with a variety of different analyses, just click again, Recall an existing analysis. You've got some options here to manage these folders. You can have multiple folders if you want. Perhaps you may want to have a folder with all of your clients from one clinic, another folder with all your clients from a different clinic, and a client for your friends and family, a client for your teaching cases, and a range of different options. You can do that by just pushing the button New Folder. So if I do that now, it gives me the option to give this a name. So we could say this, say South Clinic. Click OK. So you can see it's created a new folder here for me, South Clinic, and I've got my old default clinic folder. I can also delete a folder if I want. So I said, okay, I deleted this South folder clinic, I don't want it anymore. So I click Delete Folder. So if you do that, it will delete the entire folder and any analyses that are saved inside that folder. And I'll say yes to confirm that. If you want to delete just one individual analysis example, so for example the HERSCU example that we just created, I'll just click it to highlight it, and then click the button to delete the analysis. It'll ask me, am I really sure? Because if once I deleted it, I can't get it back again. I'll say yes. So it's deleted that analysis from my list of saved analyses. And I'll just click Cancel to close that window down again. Okay. So one other thing I want to show you, also two other things I want to show you today, and then we can talk about a couple of questions that you guys have got. Another new feature in the 1.32 is a lot of people have asked for a way to help them when they're printing their analyses. And obviously there's two different ways that you can print an analysis. You can do it in a landscape mode, or a long skinny mode, a long wide mode I should say, or portrait mode, the long skinny, a vertical or a horizontal kind of alignment. You can always change that in your printer options. Usually what you do is go into your printer options and change back and forth between those two different modes and use whichever one you want to use at the time. We've put in a shortcut to do that, so you can always do it from the same place, because of course every printer that you use is going to have different printer options. So under this print button, you've got these two little options here, print in portrait mode or print in landscape mode. I won't do it now because I don't have a printer connected, but if you click on them, it'll bring up your print tools. You can just push OK to print your analysis out and decide if you want a long skinny or a long wide version of the analysis. Doing it in portrait mode is going to give you analysis that looks a bit more like this, with a longer list of medicines. So if you wanted to print them out and see more of your medicines, printing in that landscape mode, it's going to give you a long, wider one. If you want to see a shorter, skinnier version, especially if you've got a longer list of rubrics and you want to fit more rubrics in, you could choose to print it in portrait mode, which is the long, tall, vertically arranged, skinny version. The other change in the 1.32 is you've got an automatic backup feature now. Obviously, with having our patient details, etc. in here, it's really important for you to keep regular backups in case anything happens to your computer and you lose that information. So when you close the program down, it's going to automatically prompt you to do a backup. I'm going to do that now as an example so you can see how that works. So I'm just going to click the cross button in the top corner of my program in order to shut it down. And you can see this will bring up the RadarOpus Backup Assistant, which asks me to do a backup. There's two options here. I'll choose what files I want to back up. The first one is to choose to let RadarOpus pick for you. Essentially, it does a backup of everything that we would recommend that you be backing up regularly. If you've got different needs or you want to focus on something more specific or something broader, you could use the bottom option to choose a specific set of options. Everything that gets backed up by the first option, the let RadarOpus choose for me, is really all your personal information. Everything doesn't back up any stuff that comes default in the program. So if you just choose the first option, it will save everything that's just your information. So if you ever need to reinstall the program, you can reinstall it from your disk and then just restore that backup, and everything will be as it was before you reinstalled. This bottom one's probably more of there's some things that you don't want to back up, you don't want to save them, you don't mind losing them, or if you want to start backing up sections of the program, if you're working on something particularly different. Most of us don't need that, so you could probably just leave it set for let RadarOpus choose to me. You've also got an option here to choose how often you want to be reminded to back up your cases. So every day is the default option, but if you want to, you can make it less and say just remind me once a week or once a month, depending on how much information you're saving inside your program. So after you've got this window, to just click the next button, and it's going to ask you where you want to save your backups. So to choose a backup destination, you can click Browse, and the default option when you first do this the first time is going to be the desktop of your computer, just a simple place. It's easy for you to find it. But of course, the best thing by far to do is to save it on an external memory stick, save it on something that's separate to or outside of your computer. So if your hard drive broke or something like that, you've got a second copy somewhere distant to that. Wherever you pick as your location, you can see down the left-hand side, got a range of options here. You'll have your hard drives, your external memory sticks, etc. You can choose the one that you want. But wherever you pick then becomes your default location, and RadarOpus will always save it back again in that same location until you tell it to do otherwise. So it remembers where you last saved things to, and we'll just keep putting them in the same place. So I'll leave it set to my desktop for now and click Select Folder to say, yep, I'm happy with that. And we can see here it's saving it to my Greg profile on the desktop. Click Next. And it's going to confirm for me it's saving all my configuration files, my analyses, my patients, my personal editions, and my personal documents. I'll click Start. And so it runs through and does a backup of each of those sections. So I can see configuration files is done, analyses is done. It's working through my patients list now. When it's finished there, it moves on to my personal editions and my personal documents. And then when it's finished, I can click Close, and that will shut my program down. And so you can see here on my desktop, there's that backup that was just done. It's called RadarOpus Backup 2012, 2nd of February, 18th at 10:39 in the morning, and it's the full backup with all the details there. Inside that is all the sections of the information that the backup's been done, but you don't need to worry about the individual sections inside because the program will just work with the folder. And if you have saved this on your desktop, again, it's a good idea, pop it on a memory stick or an external hard drive or something external to your program, so that you've got a copy in case everything ever went astray with your computer. Okay, so I'm just going to open up my webinar program so I can see questions. Just give me a moment, guys. Okay, so if you've got something you want to have a look at, just type it in now for me. I'm just going to have a look. So I've got a couple of questions here, so we'll run through some of these. Okay, great, Linda. Okay, so Linda's got a question: when you're navigating, how do you go back to the, so I'll rewind, I'll show you what we looked at earlier and we'll see how that fits into context for you. So I'm looking at the rubric for fear of cats. So I'm going to bring it up by clicking on my binoculars. I'm going to go into the mind section. I'm going to go into fear by typing the word fear, F-E-A-R, enter. Cats, C-A-T-S, enter. And so I'm inside here, so I'm in the mind fear cats. So Linda's question is, how do I just get back to the C section? So there's no simple way to go directly back to the C because you're actually inside the F, the fear section at the moment. So if I wanted to go back and see other things that start with the letter C, you could push the fear to bring up that navigation window and then just push the letter C. And so that's the C section coming up there for you. If I escape out of that, I'm going to go back to the fear of cats rubric so I can show it to you again. Mind fear cats of. The other options when I'm at this mind fear cats of, I could just push a backwards arrow on my keyboard. So it brings up that window. Push the back arrow again, so I'm in the mind fear section, and I could type a C and come up with all the other fears that start with the letter C. You can choose to make a setting. The default setting in here is that when you start typing, it will take you to a chapter. So for example, when I'm in the repertory here, if I push the letter C, it tries to bring up all the chapters that start with the letter C. If you prefer, you can change the settings so it will always stay inside the current chapter, so it would go to the C section of that chapter. The way that you can change that setting is in the preferences, just to the right hand side here. And so you want to be in this navigation window and click on the preferences. There is an option, stay in the same chapter when typing in the document. If I click that option here, I'll do that and close it down. You can see I'm currently in the mind chapter. If I push the letter C, rather than bringing up a chapter that starts with the letter C, it takes me to the C section of the mind chapter. So that's a preference. You can choose which one you'd rather use. If you're going to be a keyboard user and you want typing to go to the chapter, just leave it as default. If you'd rather the typing to stay inside the current chapter, you can change that setting, and in which case you'd use the to change chapters, you'd use the binoculars or push the F2 function button to bring up that option to change back and forth between the different chapters. I know some people like to stay inside the chapter, especially if you're a kind of user who's focusing mainly on a couple of chapters. If you're using most of your rubrics from the mind chapter and most from the generals chapter, for example, a good Kentian style analysis, maybe you prefer to stay inside that chapter and use the F2 or the mouse button to move back and forth between the different chapters. Okay. So Len's saying, can I print to a PDF or a file? You can't at the moment. You could do if you have a PDF converter on your program. Though shortly you'll have an option to export to PDF. There is an option at the moment to export to XML, which is a way of sending it to another person with the program. I'll show you where that one is. So if I go into, so I'll just put a rubric in my clipboard. So I've got analysis as an example. I could choose analysis, send the current analysis by email, and that would just open up my email program with my analysis already attached as an XML document, which is a file format that would let another RadarOpus user import that into their program. If I choose save current analysis, I've got the same options here to export in another format. So at the moment you just have XML, but very shortly you'll have PDF as an option as well. If you want to send just an image of your analysis to someone, one of the fastest ways to do it, if I bring up my one rubric analysis, is to take a screenshot. So you can essentially this takes a picture of whatever's on your screen at the moment, and again exactly the same, you can save that or email it to someone or pass it on that way. So if I push the screenshot button, it takes a picture of the entire window, screenshot like that, and I've got a list here of my a picture of what's on my window at the moment, and I can choose if I want to email that to someone, copy it into my my computer's copy board so I can paste it into a Word document or something like that, or I can save it as a file. If I want just the analysis, from my drop down below screenshot, I've got the option take a screenshot of the current window. So if I click on that, takes a screenshot of just my analysis. So then you can click email or copy or save that to pass it on to someone that way as well. There is a really nifty little program that I use. It's only available on PC. I'm sure there's a Mac equivalent, but I don't know what it is. Sorry, any Mac users. But there's a nifty little program you can get called Cute PDF. Cute as in a cute little puppy dog, CUTE, which you can install on your computer, and that lets you print as a PDF from inside any program. So then when you print something, so for example, I'll do it on here and click my print button. I've got this option, Cute PDF, that I installed, and then when I print, it will actually save it as a PDF. So that's a useful way as well. You can save it as a PDF from any program you've got that way. If anyone wants to use that, just pop me an email and ask. I'll be happy to send you the details of where you can download that one from. Okay. So Melanie says, can you create a new folder of your analyses and then put the current analysis into it by dragging or similar? Not by dragging, because the folder that you're saving into is only visible in the save analysis here, so there's no way to drag between the program at the back and up here. But whatever is the analysis you've got in your clipboard at the moment, you could then specify and put it into a folder. So just click through and click the folder you want to put it on. So toggle back and forth between multiple folders. If you've got multiple, just click this drop down here and you can move back and forth between them. I'll just go through and show you that process of creating a folder again. So I'll close this one. So I'm going to do analysis, save my current analysis, and save it to a folder. I want to put it into a new folder, so I'll say new folder. I'm going to call it Melanie, and I'll click OK, and I can give it a name, and then I'll just push the save button, and so that saves it then inside my Melanie folder. If I decided later on, actually, I want that in my default folder instead, so I'll go back to a fresh clear program so I can show you how that would work. So clear everything. So if I decide in a month's time, actually I wish I had put that in my default folder, I could go into recall my existing analysis. I'm going to recall this Melanie example, and then I just save it into the folder that I want. So save the current analysis into the folder, default folder, and save it. I've got one there already. Yes, I'll overwrite that. So Julia is saying that in a navigation window for synthesis, you've got two extra icons, the clinical and the expressions. So yeah, so there was two chapters in the synthesis which have been removed from the synthesis in the current version. It's a clinical chapter and a expressions chapter. So these are essentially combinations or theme type rubrics. They were large thematic or disease-orientated rubrics that have been comprised by combining information from other sections of the repertory to create some nice big broad rubrics for people who are doing therapeutic prescribing or for some of the more Bonninghausen type approaches. In one of the last update, they've been actually removed from that, and they're going to be put in as a separate document in the repertories. If I go to my repertories tab, you've got your list of repertories at the top, and then below that you've got concepts, which is again information from all different areas of the repertory, cross-referenced and indexed into great big super rubrics. We're actually taking those two chapters out of the synthesis proper and moving them into synthesis concepts, so they're in a separate section. So for people who want to use them, they've got them so they can access via concepts. For other people who prefer the more specific classical type approach to rubrics, then we can take them out of the synthesis and have them available to both people that way. So it will depend on the current version, the update you've got. If you see them in there or not at the moment, they'll shortly be moved out for everyone. Paul says, any media web searches available or integrated selections? Yes, it depends what you're searching for. I'll show you a couple of examples and let me know if this is what you mean. So for example, I'm looking at absinthe. I've got this come up in my analysis. I want to find out more about absinthe. I can double click it. This brings up the remedy information window. So the remedy information window is a place you can just find all sorts of stuff out about your medicines. By default, when you open this up in the current version, it's always going to take you to the keynotes. So if you ever want to access the keynotes for a medicine, either from the analysis, from the repertory, you see the medicine name, you can double click it and open up this remedy information window. First you see the keynotes. You've also got all the family groups it belongs to here. There's the passport with Friends of Mulan's information on the source material, multimedia files, so pictures, images, sound clips, etc. that come default in the program. But if you want to find more information, you've got your options here to search for more. So for example, I want to go to Wikipedia. I can click on the Wikipedia button. This is going to go through, do a web search for me. It takes you straight to the Wikipedia site and does a search for absinthe, Artemisia absinthium, and brings up all the information about it they've got on Wikipedia. You can do the same here with a Google search, a Google image search. It's a couple of specific homeopathic sites that index and publish provings. So you can go to provings.com and provings.info, or there's some taxonomical sites here for the plants that you can go directly to those plant databases and find out information about them that way. Carolyn, do you have a written list hard copy of shortcuts on the keyboard? Yes, there is one that you can print out. It's under, I think it's under Help. I'm just going to check. Help. Here we go, useful shortcuts. So under the Help tab in your main menu here, there's a list of useful shortcuts, which you can click and it opens up a PDF of the shortcuts in the program. So if you want to use those shortcuts and keyboard commands, it'll give you the Windows and the Mac versions of that. They're essentially the same, but of course they're what is usually a control button in a PC becomes a command button, or the Apple button on a Mac. You can print that out or save it separately if you want to. Lynette's saying, can I change whether I'm searching by root or synonyms for each term specified on the one-line search function? Okay, so if we go into the search function, I'll show you guys what that means. In the search window, when you do a search, any word that you type in, so for example, if I type in fear and conduct a search with that, you can see I get all these results with the word fear. Hopefully he's got some other examples. Okay, this document doesn't, bad example I picked there. But you're also going to find all the words that are related to fear. So you'll also get fearful, or fearing, or fears, plural. Roots and branches is the default. So you get the root word, fear, plus all its branches, all the similar related words. You can also specify if you want to include the synonyms. So you might also get anxious or worry, or other words that mean something similar to fear. The way you can access that in the simple window is by doing a right click on it. So if I right click on that search word, it brings up my dictionaries. And so I can see my roots and branches. I've got fears, feared, fearing, or I can go into my synonyms, afraid, dread, fearful, fears, scared, etc. I could go in translation and search in other languages if I can't find anything in my language about something. So you can move back and forth between these and choose the one that you want to do. Whichever ones you have selected here, give the option, you can tick them and click OK, and then that will use them as additional variables in the search that you're doing. So you can see by default the roots and branches are always turned on. So if you want to untick them, you could untick them and turn that off. Synonyms, so if I go through and tick, right, okay, afraid, dread, fear, fears, scared, terror. So then when I do a search, it's going to search for the roots and branches as well as for the synonyms I've selected. So I click OK, and you can see this has changed to kind of like the word fear has turned to like a green sort of color because I've edited it and changed it. And if I conduct a search using that, it's going to give me the whole range of those extra options. Just clear that. Okay. Jane, so in the previous version of Radar, you were able to make comparative extractions from 2 to 3 remedies, i.e. search the mind symptoms with the grade, etc. Yes. So is that in Opus and where is it? Okay, so let's look at that's in the advanced search window. So I'll go into the advanced search window here, which I can do by clicking the circles and dashes button to move into the advanced search, or with your keyboard you can push the F5 function button on your keyboard. And so you're specifying a number of remedies. So I want to type in remedies. So say I'm trying to compare sulfur and pulsatilla. I could say sulfur and pulsatilla. and you can put as many medicines as you want there. And I'm going to click on just above that where we've got this the word remedies and this little symbol that looks like an infinity type symbol. And I'll click this one here, and I can choose the option common and exclusive remedy symptoms. So what's common? What have they got that's the same? And exclusive? What have they got that's different? And I'll conduct my search. And you can see it's going through and doing 3 searches there. I've got one that's got what sulfur and positilla have got in common. I'm currently in Sher's mental quality, so you're seeing it come up from Sher, but I could click another document if I want to see it in another document. I've got what sulfur's got without positilla, and I've got what positilla has got without sulfur. Just by clicking on the tab, you can move back and forth between the view of the current one that you want to see there. So I'll clear that. I'll do another example of that one. So let's go into synthesis. And I'm going to bring up my advanced search window by clicking on the F5 button. And under remedies, I'll look at, say, Athusa and colocynthis. So I've entered those into the search field. Under remedies, I'm going to choose the option common and exclusive remedy symptoms, and then click enter to conduct my search. And so it actually goes through and does 3 searches there. It gives me what's the same between Athusa and colocynthis, what Athusa's got that colocynthis doesn't, and what colocynthis has got that Athusa doesn't. So you can see here, if I click on each of the tabs, you can see this tab is the Athusa and the colocynthis. This one is the Athusa without the colocynthis, and this is the colocynthis without the Athusa. Julie is asking me hard questions today. Can you explain a bit about how to use de Groot's dream repertory? I can give you a tour for sure. I don't know if I can explain a bit. I'll give you a tour though. I'll just bring this one up to the top. So this is de Groot's dream repertory, which is a bit broader than purely a dreams repertory, but there's heaps and heaps of stuff in here. There's just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of references to specific dream symptoms, and it's kind of information that's not published anywhere else. Big sections of this information comes from his clinical experience and his focus in this area, so a lot of this is unique information that's just not available anywhere else. And so it's a whole list of dreams and their medicines. Again, it works the same as the other repertories. Once I'm in this document, I can click on my binoculars to bring up my list of chapters. You can see my first chapter is a dreams chapter. This is the focus of his information. But I've also got other chapters with all the different other parts of the body. It works exactly the same as a regular repertory does. If I look into the dreams chapter, again, alphabetical listing of all the sections. So let's look at gecko. That's an interesting one. It's a giant, dangerous gecko which threatens them, so everyone tries to fly away. Sepia. So you can see it's got quite specific, interesting information. And if you have a client who says to you, I dream of giant, dangerous geckos that everyone runs away from, you're not going to find that anywhere else other than in de Groot's dream repertory. It's quite specific. Most of these are single symptoms, 2 or 3 medicines in them. They're quite small, specific rubrics with really individualizing type dreams in them. He's also got his other chapters. I can go into abdomen, for example. Discharge from the umbilicus. Click through and see all different bits of information there. I can go into his food chapter. He's got a whole range of foods. So this is all pretty quite specific, unique information that again is not broadly available anywhere else. So it's a kind of useful book. I keep it open. I often don't go to it as my first rubric, first repertory, because the rubrics are quite small. But I usually keep it open when I'm searching for stuff in case it's something specific and bizarre that doesn't come through anywhere else. And often this chucks a little detail in, which can be a bit nifty and useful. So another question from Jane on the search: can we ask for only rubrics with a grade of 3 or 4? Yeah. So again, same as the extraction from before. In the search window, next to each remedy is this little settings drop-down option. and you can specify in here if you only want certain degrees, or rubrics, certain rubric sizes, or rubrics with more than a certain number of medicines, etc. In some of the sections, like the family section here, you can specify how big a percentage of the rubric should belong to that family, or those sorts of variables. It's the same as in the simple search, really, that in this advanced search you've got this little drop down option to get into settings for any of your search terms. In the simple search, it's the same as what I looked at earlier with the word fear. You can always right click on any term and bring up the range of variables for that specific term. So if I had a medicine here instead of a word, pulsatilla for example, I can right click on it and bring up those options of pulsatilla.